Johnson County MOU.
We'll call this Tuesday, January 11th, 2022, Reno County Commission meeting to order. And first we will open the meeting with a pledge of allegiance to the American flag and a prayer by Pastor Mike Rose of South Hutchinson United Methodist Church.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you join with me in an attitude of prayer? Gracious God, as we begin this new year, we do so with great joy. We're so grateful for your holy presence with us right here, right now. We're grateful also for the hard work that county employees do day in and day out to make Reno County the best in the state and the nation. We're so grateful for each, especially who have come here today to deliberate and decide important decisions. We ask your blessing upon each deliberation and on each decision. We ask your blessing also upon our commissioners. They have given so much of themselves to this endeavor, and we just pray that you might lead and guide them in the way that you want this county to go. Thank you for your promise. Thank you for your privilege, and thank you for allowing us to serve you as we come together as Reno Countians. So bless all now, in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
Well, welcome all of you to the first meeting of 2022 of the Reno County Commission. And I would second what Pastor Rose said about our employees and the good job they're doing despite whatever weather occurs. This time we will go to public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll go to the determine any additions or revisions to the agenda. Commissioner Friesen?
No, sir.
Commissioner Sellers?
No.
We have some that we want to add. We want to add resolution number 2022-02, a resolution renewing a proclamation of a state of local disaster emergency for Reno County, Kansas on the consent agenda. We'll add a memorandum of understanding between Johnson County Medical Examiner's Office and the Reno County, Kansas. And it'll add that item to the business items, and we'll put that, and I would request that we put that as the first business item. And then one other item to change would be the first executive session. To change that from 30 minutes to 15 minutes. Randy, do you have any others?
No, that covers everything. I don't know.
All right.
Chairman, I would move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes. The consent agenda consisted of the vouchers owed by the county, purchase of one 2022 Ford F-150 responder pickup from Midwest Motors for a net cost of $12,693. Purchase of four 2022 Ford Interceptor SUV hybrids from Midway Motors for a net cost of $114,708. Resolution declaring and establishing certain regulations of the streets and highways pursuant to KSA 8-2002, and that is at the intersection of Mohawk Road and Clark Road. And I think that is on the southbound traffic on that. And then the resolution reviewing a proclamation of a state of local disaster emergency for Reno County, Kansas. And Adam, do you have anything you want to add to that? We've all got the information.
Commissioners, I don't really have anything to add. I just want to reiterate an email that I sent saying that this does not include any mandates or anything like that. It doesn't change what we're doing locally. The only reason we're renewing this is simply to be able to receive supplies from the state.
And the commission wishes to, on the consent agenda as presented. Is there any questions?
I would move that we approve the consent agenda, A through E.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion?
I guess I'd just like to note that I was pleased to see that on the sheriff's bid that two of our local companies were able to do parts of that. It's good to see that by the bidding process, we were able to use two different companies for that acquisition. I think that's good.
Also pleased to note that the hybrids are working for them. Some money. Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes. Okay. Now we'll go to business items, and the first item on the business items would be the memorandum of understanding. Randy?
Excuse me. Danny Nolan, the designated investigator district attorney, is here along with Mr. Elliott to maybe explain it if you want, Dan, if you don't mind.
Good morning, Commissioners. Danny Nolan, Reno County Designated Investigator. Currently, Reno County, and as for several years, if you're not aware, has contracted with the Sedgwick County Forensic Science Center to handle all forensic medical examinations, toxicology, autopsy, and everything that includes for Reno County. Dr. Scott Kipper is one of their pathologists, and he acts as the Reno County coroner. He let me know middle of last year that because of the volume of calls that they are receiving for all of the adjacent counties that they handle outside of Sedgwick County, that they need to step back and no longer provide services for Reno County. That being said, I started looking at some other options, met with law enforcement leadership and some of the county administration to talk about options, and we unanimously agreed that Johnson County Forensic Science Center is the best option. They recently opened a $21 million facility, and they only handle Johnson County cases right now, so we would be the first outside county that they would provide those services to. There's an increased cost. There's with the overall cost of sending bodies from Reno County up to Johnson County, they actually are providing services to us at a reduced cost than what we're paying at Sedgwick County, but the transportation cost has gone up. So I'm here to, as Randy's request, to field any questions you guys might have regarding some of those specifics.
Questions?
Randy, there was an Exhibit A on called for it. Do we have Exhibit A?
For Green or?
Oh,
the part of the agreement from Johnson County, their Exhibit A. Danny, I don't know if that was part of the attachment.
You have the you have the digital copy of that?
My questions were mainly around the fiscal impact, and think the costs were in the attachment A.
So based on transportation options, again, that's where the fiscal impact is going to be. It's just logistically, it's just more expensive to remove a body from a scene and take it to, some places 3 hours away versus 1 hour away. That's where we've been in talks with Tom Elliott Mortuary, about contracting with them and using a local removal company, as the term is. Currently, we use Preferred Mortuary Service out of Sedgwick County. Right now, if I'm on a scene or one of my investigators is on a scene, it's an hour plus wait with law enforcement, with family, a lot of times waiting. If we make a switch to a local removal company, then the time is going to significantly get reduced for ourselves and for the law enforcement or whoever's on scene. So that might not affect the coroner budget, but there's going to be an impact to law enforcement agencies' budgets as well.
And on the sheet, I did pull it up, and I don't know if you want to look at it to explain. I don't have it on that, but for the commission.
Are we talking about their proposal?
Oh, I didn't know if it was that, or I'll show you the attachment. I'm not sure when they're talking about the transport.
Sure. Oh, that's the one I put together. Just a little bit of some options. Preferred Mortuary out of Sedgwick County, who we're currently using, has proposed that they would still provide transport to Johnson County. They would come from Sedgwick County to Reno and then take the body back to Sedgwick County, store it until the next morning, and then drive it to Johnson County. To me, that doesn't make sense. We're looking at just shy of about $600 in total cost for that. Elliott Mortuary, the numbers that Tom's provided are right around the same, but what would happen there is that he would send his employees out, usually 2 at a time, to make the removal locally, take it back to their facility, and then coordinate transport the next morning to Johnson County. Another option is a removal company out of Kansas City. We would still use Elliott's locally, and then the next morning we would coordinate the metro removal out of Kansas City to come down early enough to get the body back for its forensic medical examination.
What do we pay today for transport?
Right now, locally, while using Sedgwick County, we pay $125 for most of Reno County. $150 if we're up towards Nickerson in the northwest.
And how many transports do we do a year?
Last year, I sent 75. So, coroner's cases, we had 136, I believe, coroner's cases last year for Reno County. Not all of those we send the body. A lot of times we can pull medical records and do enough of an investigation on scene that we don't need to physically send the body.
And what's the cost decrease with Johnson County?
So Sedgwick County does kind of an a la carte as far as their fee schedule, and they charge us for every different lab item, toxicology item, any kind of examination that they do. Johnson County is going to do more of a complete package no matter what we need unless it's really above and beyond. So Sedgwick County, our average cost right now is about $2,560 per autopsy. That includes the transportation, and that includes any kind of x-rays, toxicology, the autopsy itself, storage of the body if it's more than about a week or so. Johnson County is going to be closer to $2,300. So we're saving a couple $100 there by switching to Johnson County. But again, we have the increased transport cost. So
it's about,
we're looking at $2,900 on average, which is an increase of about $350 per case when we start using Johnson County.
about a $26,000 impact.
26,000 is about where I was, yeah. And it's case by case. I mean, trends, I can kind of watch them, but every case is different.
Yeah.
For those that are uninformed, including me, would you go over where autopsies are required?
So an autopsy, A lot of it is the recommendation of the pathologist, the forensic pathologist, in our case, Dr. Kipper. But we're going to do an autopsy on any traffic fatality, any homicide, anything where we feel that there is a unnatural death that we cannot explain as by the means of death. So let's take a suicide, a hanging suicide. More than likely, we don't need to do a full autopsy on that. We'll send the body still, we'll run toxicology, we'll do x-rays, CT scans, whatever, but we don't need to actually do a full autopsy. We can do an external examination. So the cost is going to be decreased if it's an external examination versus an autopsy.
And we have 175 of those.
About 75 is
75.
what and again, that's only what I sent over. Not all of those were full autopsies. That's actually just cases from Reno County last year that I chose to send to the pathologist.
Mr. Elliott, are you here just to listen, or do you?
No, I have a, if I can just join Danny. My name is Tom Elliott with Elliott Mortuary. Couple of concerns. This is a necessary service, regardless. And it is a lot of money in a year's time. Danny and I have known each other a long time. He used to work for us at the funeral home. With Hutchinson having a great medical hub of doctors between Prairie Star, the clinic, and the hospital, it's unfortunate we can't get local doctors and professionals in the medical field to fill this void, not having to go all the way to Kansas City. Sure, going to Kansas City is an expense to the county, but the county only pays to take the body up. The family of the deceased is required to pay the transportation back. And that's going to change from $150 going to Wichita to $500 to their funeral bill to go and receive the body and bring it back. And that's my concern. An external examination is when an autopsy is not done, but a medical professional needs to examine the body. And I'm hoping in some way we can reduce the number of bodies that have to go to Kansas City, if we could perhaps find local medical professionals to fill that void. But that's difficult. Anyone who participates in this has the liability of possibly going to court and testifying, and that's why years ago all the coroners were local doctors. I'm going back to the 70s and 80s. And then we tried 2 or 3 other systems and it didn't work, and we've been with Sedgwick County and Dr. Kipper for 10 years, 15 years probably. I was at the coroner's office in Wichita last week. They had over 4,200 cases in that facility last year. So yes, they are busy, and it's too bad they can't staff it to accommodate us. But and why we got kicked out and some of the other counties did not, I don't know. But is that in? My concern is the timing. You know, Wichita's an hour away, Kansas City's 3.5 to get to Olathe. The delays we may have with Olathe, I don't know yet. They're going to take care, I'm sure, of their cases first and then get to Reno County, hopefully in a timely manner, which delays the family's planning of a service and getting the body back to Hutchinson. But this is just going to be a work in progress until we start with them to figure out the logistics of how it's going to happen. And I hope it's smooth. But we have delays with Wichita too. We always take the back seat to Sedgwick County when it comes to getting the bodies in and out.
Well, I don't have any issue with the recommendation. I think I appreciate the thinking around using local services, and this is a good opportunity to do that. And I think Mr. Elliott makes a good point too about if we can keep some of the services here and reduce the amount of transportation because of the cost to the county and to the family. I don't know who would. Danny, is that something you could?
I can dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah. I think we should ask staff to do that as a matter of course as we're changing other things. But I'm ready to make a motion if the commission's ready.
I would agree. I would just hope that the 2 people here today look for options as we go along to mitigate the time and costs, because neither one of them are favorable.
No, but like I said, the Olathe is a good choice for now, but I think it can be improved upon perhaps as we get into it.
So I might ask that the minutes reflect, I think there's consensus here that we ask staff to look at using physician services locally for services we can use to reduce the costs to the county and to the families. But I'd make a motion to approve the MOU as presented by staff for the contract of Johnson County Medical Examiner's Office for autopsy services.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
I did have a question to Danny. And maybe you've stated this already, is the reason that local people do not want to be involved in this is because of the court situation, the potential court situation?
Well, a forensic pathologist is 12 years of schooling. It's more than just a medical doctor. There's some very specific schooling they have to go through. And part of the reason that Sedgwick County is having a problem is because there's roughly 1,000 positions nationwide for a forensic pathologist. There's only about 500 forensic pathologists nationwide. So there's a definite need for those, and Sedgwick County is just not able to draw what they need. They've had a position open for approximately 2 years. So locally, we don't have anybody with those qualifications in Reno County with any of our...
But didn't you suggest that some of these cases could be handled by a lesser person if they so desired?
Well, what myself and my investigator, I have a part-time investigator that works with me, what we have started doing this year is when we're investigating on scene, seeing if there's any way that we can conduct a thorough and the appropriate examination needed without having to transport the body. And what that takes is just more education, more certifications for the investigators. Luckily, I've been able to get some of those certifications through this position, and if we can lessen the amount of bodies that we actually have to send, then that's going to save the county money right there. So,
well, I would definitely support any education you can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
To reduce the transportation costs. So.
Well, and I appreciate the commission's time. This is a subject I've never heard of before. I have absolutely no knowledge, so I think it's important that we gain just a little bit of knowledge.
Well, you guys stop by my office anytime. I'll talk to you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, on the motion, would that authorize the county administrator to sign the contract? My name's on the agreement with Johnson County.
That's part of the motion. You want to read the motion back, Cindy? No? Daniel,
I
you
can
want to
make
read
it again. Motion to approve the MOU between the county and the Reno County Medical Examiner's Office for autopsies fees, and authorize the county administrator to sign.
Okay. Second?
And I seconded that.
Okay. Further discussion? No? Roll call?
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes. Okay. Next business item is tabled from December 14th, 2021. Planning case number 2020-09, a request by Reno County Planning Commission for a series of text amendments to the April 2016 edition of the Reno County zoning regulations regarding commercial wind energy conversion systems. Okay. Mark, Don?
Mark Boniachin, County Planner. So, as you know, Commission, the wind energy regulations have been tabled for a long time here, and been put back on the agenda today for discussion. There's 3 actual amendments to consider. One was an amendment to the table of contents. The second amendment was essentially the elimination of the current wind energy regulations that are found in the zoning regulations. And then the third amendment is the creation of Article 23, which are the new wind energy regulations. I'm going to reference the draft that's labeled January 29th of 2021. Given the new direction that the Commission went with wind energy regulations, I have 2 suggested amendments should you choose to go ahead and approve this version or another version of the Commission. And in referencing that draft, the first amendment that I'd like to propose is it's under Article 23-101 on the first page. It's the second paragraph that talks about to the extent that there are conflicts between the requirements of Article 23. That whole paragraph really needs to be eliminated given the fact that the Commission has now prohibited wind in the current zoned areas of the county. This paragraph is no longer needed. There won't be any other conflicts with other zoning regulations.
Mark, where is that so I can pull it up?
On the first page under the draft regulations, probably keep going right there, and Article 23-101, that second paragraph right where your cursor is, that little paragraph right there. To the extent that there are conflicts between the requirements of Article 23 and other provisions of the zoning regulations, Article 23 shall control the interpretation. That's no longer needed since we have prohibited wind in the current zoned areas of the county. The second amendment is actually just a typo, and it's found on page 23-6. And it's at the top of page 23-6 under letter E. If you see on the second line, it talks about Article 23-107-2E. The letter E needs to be changed to letter D. Those are the 2 recommended changes from staff, and other than that, I do not have any other comments at this time. I'm open for other discussion from the Commission on what you'd like to do with the regulations, and Donna's also in the audience too.
I guess I'm trying to still figure out where we're at, because we've got so many in here.
Well,
23-1 and 23-6 is
I've got some here with red lines and put in yellow. That's the paragraph that we're looking at?
That's the version that was discussed at a study session with the Commission. Nothing was really formally agreed to. I'm going to reference the original draft from January 29th that does not have any corrections.
I was on the February 9th.
There you go. Yeah, that was the other version that we had the study session with suggested changes.
So,
Mr. Chairman, just to move the conversation along, and so that we can open it for discussion, I would make the motion that we approve planning case 2020-09 with the 2 changes that were just discussed, which is 23-101, the second paragraph deleted, and 23-6, changing the letter E to D.
second. Okay, and that's just the wording amount, right? Those two items.
Just those 2 items, just to eliminate that paragraph and then correct the typographical error, changing that to letter D.
Which I believe you've already done in the
in the version in yellow that you're maybe referencing.
That's
on-
already done in that, right?
If you're looking at that version on February 9th, that second paragraph is highlighted in yellow with a red line through it.
Yeah, that's, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that I understood things.
Yes.
Okay, been moved and seconded to take out that first paragraph and to correct the one spelling. Is that correct?
Commissioner, just for clarification, this is also the original draft from the Planning Commission. This is not one that has any modifications that you guys talked about in other sessions. So just for clarification, this, what Mark and what Ron, Commissioner Sellers are mentioning is the original Planning Commission recommendation, not anything that changed the distance from house or flicker or noise. So I just want to make sure you understood that's what the version that's being discussed right now.
Well, maybe we should ask for clarification on the motion. Commissioner Sellers, is your motion to approve the entire set of amendments that were adopted by the Planning Commission, including the 2 additional amendments?
Yes.
So not just the wording, but the whole.
My motion was to approve what came to us from the Planning Commission with the 2 changes that we just mentioned.
And I'd second that.
Okay, let me understand this right. If we vote in favor, the motion was to accept it as presented on the January
29th, 2021.
Okay. Without any changes at all regarding distances, noise level.
Well, I think there are changes in here. There are changes to that, right?
Not from the Planning Commission, no. This does not include any of the suggested changes during the study session we had back in February of 2021. This is the document that the Planning Commission originally forwarded to the governing body.
Okay, I'm looking at the packet. There's a draft of February 9th, 21. That is not.
That's not the version. That's
Why
that's
is it in the packet?
that's the version that the governing body had when we had the study session.
Okay.
And Commissioner, with the packet, we had Mark and Don include every version that you guys have looked at. The first one in the packet is the January 29th, and then it starts going into the various versions you guys edited as discussion items. That way you had the entire packet before you.
And
I am.
no, just to be clear, the amended version, that was our amendment.
Those were, in study sessions, you guys had made changes of possibilities, but there was no official vote
That was
saying
our
this is,
draft.
there were drafts of possible changes, but
We sent it back to the commission, Planning Commission. We didn't. It's just
No,
been
it's
tabled.
It was just tabled.
It was just tabled at
It was
that
never
time.
referred back.
So
So let me restate it here. So we received in February-ish of this year what Commissioner Sellers motioned to approve.
it was January 2021 is when you guys saw it.
Well,
The Planning Commission originally adopted it in late December
Right.
of 20. We put it on the agenda in January. This is the original version in January. Soon after the commission, along with staff, held a study session, and that version is dated February 9th of 2021. This is where we had a couple-hour study session where the governing body suggested we make some changes to that, but nothing formal was ever decided on that. That's the version you have in yellow where you were talking about having it a 2,000-foot setback, a 2,500, a 3,000-foot setback. Nothing was ever agreed to
Right. But around beginning of the year, end of the year, 2021, we received an original document recommending approval from the Planning Commission. That's what Commissioner Seller's motion
Correct.
to approve. So that's that. In February 2021, we took that document and tried to come up with a consensus on some changes, which is also in here later. That is not what we are approving today.
Correct. That's what the motion was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion was
And
the original
to
one.
clarify why I made the motion I did, is the changes that I'm reading from the February 9th, 21 document draft. Those were ideas that were discussed and debated among the three of us. But to my knowledge, we never made a formal motion to approve any changes to that original document. And so that's why I'm suggesting that we go back to the original document for approval. And I agree, this is somewhat complicated. Each of the documents is multiple pages.
Okay.
There are several things regarding the document in January that you made a motion to approve that I think needs to be discussed. And it goes back to the February 29th, 23rd, whatever, the one in February where we were discussing that and trying to come up with a consensus that Commissioner Friesen was talking about. And that is some setback changes from the original given to us to consider from the Planning Commission. And that's where we had somewhat of a consensus to go from 2,000 to 2,500 feet. We added some things regarding U.S. Department of Agriculture. We added some things such as 3-mile setback from property owned by U.S. or Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, as well as the U.S. government. And we have something else that's been thrown into this, if we accept this, is that Kansas Department of Wildlife regarding Quivira National Refuge, their setbacks are 5 to 7 miles. And so I think that needs to be taken into consideration in any new legislation that we might look at here. And so I think also that we need to look at the potential of occurring a litigation regarding trespass zoning if we make those distances from a structure versus property line. Reno County doesn't have a nuisance law because it's basically, we can't handle a nuisance law here in the county because all that has to go through the district attorney's office. And so I think that that's an important thing to look at, and I hope that since I mentioned that a while ago, that everyone's had a chance to look up trespass zoning and see what it really means. And I had a question also. We talked about doing something regarding changing some decibel levels from daylight and dark. But that we were talking about this. So I'm just bringing up things we were visiting about in our conversation. And I also, with regard to that, looked at the applicant shall, this had to do with sound and noise. I mean, sound and shadow flicker. That I thought something for consideration should be the the applicant should provide a negotiated signed document from any property owner providing applicant an easement for any property affected by shadow, flicker, and noise. And that takes out the potential of a suit regarding trespass zoning. And, I haven't checked this with any attorney or anything like that, but I just wondered about that. And also, I wondered if the analysis and data from ice and debris throw should be presented to both participating and non-participating property owners in the project notification boundary, so they are at least aware of what the manufacturers, of what the data shows and what the manufacturers' safety requirements are. And then I've often wondered, and even the planning and zoning has brought this up at a meeting I attended. It seems like sometimes you get the horse before the cart, and I think there was some discussion there, Mark and Dawn, about when should the development agreement be brought up? Should it be done at the first so that there is no same time as the CUP is presented? And there was conversations regarding that. I believe that the Planning Commission was kind of thinking that that should be done at the same time.
Yeah, there was some discussion on that, correct?
What? Sorry.
So that's the things that I think we should look at based off of the discussions we had in February.
At least one of the commissioners, I think it was Commissioner French, said, and I could be quoting her wrong, that she felt like the CUP process didn't do a good job for the county on this issue. And she may have either said or implied that we need a better process. Was there conversation related to that?
No, it was just her observation, I think. But really, I believe that the CUP process is the planning process, and I think it did work in the sense that notices were sent out to the public. They were able to come and look at the petition. Everybody was given an opportunity to speak at that public hearing, multiple meetings.
Well,
A decision was made, and then the people down there were allowed to file that protest petition. So, in a sense, I'm not sure where she was going with that statement, but I believe staff would be of the opinion that the process actually did work.
Well, I mean, I think it's a reasonable point to say that it worked because it was finished and got completed. I think her point was, if I could again interpret what she was saying, and I guess what I believe is that the process, although it functioned, had kind of a net negative effect to the overall community and created an inability for us to solve this issue without significant discourse and significant disagreement amongst the public, the Planning Commission, even this commission. And so in that respect, I think I agree that a better process is needed. And so just to help move this along, I think I understand where my two commissioners are. I'm of the opinion with Commissioner Sellers that we need to bring closure to this issue and approve what we have in front of us. I understand that Chairman Hurst, your point is that there could be some vulnerability left on the table with unzoned areas. I think that's a reasonable balance given individuals choose to live in an unzoned area, and you have to take some of the advantages with the disadvantages, and you have great freedom in unzoned areas to do almost anything you want. At the same time, you living there, you recognize that that freedom also exists for your neighbor, and that could one day impact you. And so I think to the extent a neighborhood, kind of like what we saw in southeast Reno County, wishes to be zoned, that could come back to zoning board and back to us, and we could implement similar zoning for an area if they so desire. But I think this is a good step for closure and a good balance for an unzoned area. So I'm in support of what it is today. I would support, Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to submit some of this stuff to the Planning Commission. I think there's still an open issue of whether there's a better process and whether, we want the Planning Commission to look at developing a better process for how to assist in wind development in certain parts of western Reno County, if that's the goal. Because I don't want to be here in a year doing this again and fighting about it again. So if there's a way that the Planning Commission could develop a better approach that avoided the inevitable, I think I'm about done here. Thank you for the time. I think one of the things that's kind of out of order is we get through the whole process and then we check at the end whether 20% of the area wants to petition against it. I think if we check that on the front end, we'd save ourselves a lot of time. And maybe that's a consideration that the Planning Commission could do in further developing a better process forward. So I'm in support of Commissioner Seller's motion as is. I'm also in support of Chairman's efforts to develop better rules or process going forward, but I think that's a step after we close out this process that's been going on for some time.
Am I correct in saying that if this passes, that will be both future and down the line for both the zoned and unzoned areas?
These regulations,
Yes.
just
That's correct, isn't it? That's what I was told, that this would be both for the zoned and unzoned areas.
not for
Should that be allowed? Should a future commissions, future whoever, allow a CWEX in the zoned areas? These regulations would apply then, correct?
in the current zoned area. Well, currently, there's a ban in the zone. So then in the future, if the governing body chooses to lift that ban,
Yes.
then these regulations would then apply to that area as well as the rest of the current unzoned area, which is, the next case that we're going to be discussing. So yeah, these would be the regulations on the books for any type of wind development, but in the eastern part of the county, it's currently not allowed at all. So these regulations don't apply to that area.
Mark, can I clarify something on his question? The issue you're talking about would require the county commission, if it wanted to change the current status of prohibiting wind energy in the currently zoned area, would have to amend the regulations again. It just doesn't have the authority to waive that.
Right. Yeah, we have to amend the regulations.
It's a formal process.
Again, yeah.
So it would not apply. It does not. These regulations would not apply in a currently zoned area unless the zoning regulations are formally amended to allow for that.
Correct. That's what I was alluding to.
These would be in effect unless there was a change in the regulations.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So these would automatically be in effect if someone, later legislation would lift the ban on CWEX in the zoned areas, correct?
That's correct. Without any further change, yes.
So I think that's something to take into really consideration.
Well, but, Mr. Chairman, I think any ordinance that we approve can be changed at a later date by a different commission. So I really don't think the statement has any pertinence to the issue, is that future commission can outlaw roads or but I think that you're bringing up something that is a non-issue to this debate today, because this commission and majority of the citizens of southeastern Reno County have determined that we do not want wind in a zoned area. And I think you're trying to complicate the issue today by saying that sometime 20 years from now somebody can change things. This group's got the chance to change a lot of things, but will they? Probably not. I think you're complicating what we're discussing today by the fact that we've already said that we're not going to allow wind in a zoned area.
But just to clarify, if that hypothetical were to become true, the process would have to occur first, right?
Start over.
Like, even if the next commission in 10 years wanted to permit wind and remove what we created here, they would have to go through the entire process again.
Correct.
Public notice, send it down to the commission, planning commission, send it back up to us.
Yes.
So it
Public
doesn't,
hearing, public comment.
the fact that there might be regulations regarding wind that you don't agree with is still protected by the fact that in order to use those, you have to go through this process all over again.
I understand that. I think this is a really good start to protecting the property rights of both participating and non-participating. I think that was one of the goals, was to give those people in the unzoned areas a right to say and go through that process. But I think in that process that we need to be really careful about how we do things, giving the fact that in that there's a right to negotiate a waiver on any of these things regarding flicker and sound. And so I just think we could improve this a little bit by doing some of the things that we had consensus on with regards to water. And I just think that there's a few things that could be improved upon on this before we.
As I said, Mr. Chairman, I think we're right for a vote here, but I would also support if you had a list of things you wanted to send back down to the Planning Commission for further consideration in the development of a better process. I don't know that I would be against that.
I would I appreciate that, and I agree with you. But on the same hand, we need to have a way that we can come in and talk to the Planning Commission. And right now, I think that's pretty limited. Is there a way a person can come in and talk to the to the Planning and Zoning Commission?
A citizen or the commission? Either or?
Either or. And
We can certainly do.
You make a request to do that?
You could just contact me and let me know what the topic of discussion you want to do with the Planning Commission, and we can put you on the agenda. If the governing body at some point wants to have a study session with the Planning Commission to discuss this or any other topic, the governing body just lets me know, and we can have you on the agenda. I know the Planning Commission, before all of this came about, was very interested in meeting with the county commission on some of the goals within the comprehensive plan. That kind of got put on the side while we went through this type of process, but they're interested in meeting with the governing body too.
I think the reason I asked that question is because I've had several questions. Well, you limit limit anybody speaking, and so I just wanted to cover that issue with you, that if you want to speak, then you contact you, given the topic you want to talk about, and we'll be allocated some time to speak with you, right?
Definitely, yeah, and that's happened in the past with a few citizens, and we're there to kind of conduct a specific set agenda, but we're not here to exclude people. If they want to speak to the planning commission, you just need to let me know and give me the topic so they understand what they want to talk about. Because usually staff can maybe help them answer the question. The planning commission is there to hear cases and stuff. They're not necessarily here to hear proposed amendments and stuff, but if somebody wants to talk to them about something like that, I'm sure that we can put them on the agenda. But usually I can help answer that citizen's questions.
That's one thing.
Yeah,
I just wanted to cover that so the public would understand that.
Yeah, right.
You bet. I just feel that, and I agree wholeheartedly with about everything that's on that, but I think there's some things that we discussed earlier that I just can't go along with the footage, and we'll have an opportunity to disagree on some things and go on down the road and see what happens.
I understand your thoughts and your concerns, and I think that, as Commissioner Friesen has suggested, if you'd like to address those to the Planning Commission, in addition to your verbal, I'd certainly have a very concise document of the issues that you'd like them to consider.
I've got them.
Now, commissioners, remember, if it's not the majority of the commissioners, that would be like giving a citizen giving
Yes, you're
advice.
a citizen,
If you as a
yes.
citizen, not as a commissioner.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but
I just wanted to clarify
I think
for the public.
I think any commissioner wants to talk to, it might be better just to talk through staff, but I think we should, if any one of us would like to talk to the commission, planning commission, I would hope they'd take our appointment.
But I think Randy's got a good point, is that conversation is not representing the commission, it's representing a person.
Well, and I
It's
think
just like
You
me,
guys are only
just
commissioners
like
in
me
this.
going down to the city council that I live in and making sure that I am talking from my standpoint as a citizen rather than a commissioner. And I have done that before and made notice of that I was there as a citizen and not as a county commissioner, nor representing any county commissioner.
however you want to do it, I think if you circulated what you wanted and sent it to staff, I think you'd probably get just as much traction as meeting with them directly. And we,
Okay, any more discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Friesen? Yes. Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
I want to choose to vote no on this for the reason, it's not because I don't think that there's a document that is really a good starting point, but I think there just needs to be an improvement or two into it. Okay. Now I got to go through this process on this computer again. Randy, do you want to put it up? Click me off.
Thank you.
Is this the next agenda item?
This is the next agenda item that Mark has for the zoning district boundary map.
You've got 100 pages to go through. I'm glad you put that back up. Agenda item regarding a request to amend the jurisdiction of the official zoning district boundary map as identified in Article 1-103 of the zoning regulations.
So this was tabled last month by the governing body, and Article 1-103 sets the jurisdiction of the zoning regulations. And so as part of the other text amendments that we looked at last month. This one simply adds the CWEX zoning district to every property that is currently unzoned. In your packet, you'll see a very generalized zoning map, and everything that is in green is the current zoned area. Everything in the blue is the current unzoned area. And so the proposal before you is to add the CWEX zoning district to all the properties that are currently unzoned. By doing that, that will implement Article 23, which you just adopted for this area, and it will only be for commercial wind. It will not be any other type of zoning regulations or requirements other than floodplain, I might add.
I would move to approve the request from planning and zoning on the special district.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just for clarification, this map is a representation of all the items we've approved up until now to show where you can and where you can't.
Correct. The green area is where commercial wind would be prohibited. The blue area is where commercial wind may be allowed with an approved conditional use permit.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Don?
You ever think we'd get to this point, Mark?
I was beginning to wonder, but I had to pay for it. So yes, I thought eventually we would get there.
I appreciate the fact that we all, planning and zoning commission, all looked at the process of having the ability, should one want, so in an area want a CWAC, they have that ability and the process to go through. Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry. What's next?
The salary, the compensation study.
Okay.
So, getting all ready, huh?
Eventually.
So at the commission meeting on December 14th, Phil Hayes with the Arnold Group mentioned the pay study, compensation study, and that was, the accounting commission approved the 2% cost of living adjustment for all employees that went into effect for the first pay period of 2022. So that has already been put in place. What at that time you guys wanted to table until I came back with the budget cost or the financial true cost. You didn't want to at that time approve the new pay scale and some other items that was a part of the Reno County Employee Classification and Compensation Study. There are a lot of items in the study that we will probably be bringing back to you in the next few months that Helen will bring back to you with a resolution that kind of encompasses maybe the pay for performance, the different, I guess, items that were included. The ones that I wanted to bring back with the budget information that I felt were the most important to take care of as soon as possible were to recommend the approval of the new pay scale, approve the compensation plan, and my recommendation is to address compression at 100%, and then to approve the compensation philosophy that supports the grow, build up, build, buy up model for hiring rate of employees based on internal and external experience. That portion of it is if the sheriff's office is looking at a new deputy and they have 10 years experience with another law enforcement agency, they would get credit for at least 5 years experience, where an internal employee with 10 years would have 10 years on if we used a step system. We're not, but it's kind of similar percentages. It would give 50% of the credit for their years of experience, so that we're still, I guess, emphasizing the internal employee first, the ones that has the direct experience, but we're not discounting all the external experience that a new employee may bring. So this philosophy allows directors the opportunity to give a hiring starting wage for employees with experience from outside organizations. The pay scale, and I'll go down to the pay scale, was already presented by their own Arnold Group. The 100% compression was. At that time, with the 100% compression, it was mentioned that that was about a $1.9 million increase in our compensation, which is true, but that was based on a point in time when Phil had numbers based on the end of October wages and employees. In the budget for 2022, we looked at who was employed in April or May of last year and added 6% to all funds to cover what we thought might be the new pay scale and compression. That covered all but, look at the numbers. That covered all but about $600,000 or $430-some thousand dollars that was missed between as a net. $580,000 in the general fund is what we're short from what the budget number is and what 100% compression would do. You guys had asked, well, how are we going to cover that? Just in the sales tax alone for 2021, Reno County received $1 million more in receipts than what was budgeted. The numbers for 2022, if sales tax receipts remained flat, we would have an additional $750,000 more in revenue than what was budgeted. Those are two examples of our budgeting and conservative budgeting with revenues that allow for us to absorb this increase. Once it's in place, once it's hopefully this year, and we start budgeting for 23 and beyond, it'll be like any other pay increase that's done annually by the county commission, to where that budgeted number for pay is absorbed, and we make other adjustments throughout the budget to not recommend pay or tax increases. The 100% compression would not result in, that would not be the cause if there's a mill levy increase or tax rate increase for future budget years. That would be dependent more on other expenditures coming in high with the rate of inflation, or if there's a large capital projects, or the county commission approves additional personnel in the future. But the wage study and the 100% compression alone is not going to have an impact on the mill levy, because we can't absorb it with our budgets right now. I put in here and explained that the other funds, aging is a little $102,000 over budget with the 100% compression. I did talk with Barbara, and she, with some of their other fund revenues coming in, their federal grants covering part of that fund, not this directly, but that fund, they're able to absorb the increase in pay. Other funds have more in their budget of what we budgeted and based on employment at that time than what this 100% compression would do. And a lot of that deals with, some of the departments have lost some long-time employees that have retired that would have had some good pay with the compression, but chose to retire or leave the county. So I'm going to go down to I had to inherit the budget scenario that I sent. At the end of the document. here's the salary survey analysis as part of another reason why the numbers that the Arnold Group gave weren't apples to apples for the county is there's a good portion of those wages that are not tax funded. Solid waste is an example. Youth services, juvenile intake and assessment. There's some grant funded from the sheriff's office that's not included. Community corrections is not part of the tax levied funds. And that had, so the section that says levied fund no, those were part of that 1.9 original number that are not tax levied funds. Then the funds here, 001 is a general fund, and it shows by department what the 100% compression is along with the budgeted numbers. For the general fund, since we have so many different departments listed, we put a pool, the compression pool, and that's the $559,000 we budgeted for. We are still $580,000 short again, but we can cover that with increase in revenues from non-property tax sources that help cover that difference for the next couple years. And then aging, that's the other one that's short a little bit. They have other sources of non-property tax funds that will help cover that shortage. Health department has more money than needed for the compression, along with Public Works' noxious weeds, Public Works Road and Bridge, Public Works Utility, and then youth services. So the net is we're short $435,689 for the total of the levied funds. Any questions?
Well, thank you for bringing that information back. I think it better explains what we're being asked to do today, and it better explains the fact that the county administrator believes that we can absorb these increases due to the reasons he's just stated. So
And just for clarity, if you guys do approve this, it would go into effect for employees and new hires the second pay period of February. The second, if that's what you choose. Or, let me say, or the first pay period in March, whichever one you wanted to do. But I recommend effective the second pay of February. So for current hourly employees, that would begin with their pay January 30th for the hours they start earning on January 30th. And for salary, it'd be for wages beginning on February 6th. And that is because it takes time to change the financial system, to make the change for the pay scale and how we input employees.
Well, I think the administration, the financial people, the HR people have done a lot of work with this to really give us some accurate, good information, as Commissioner Sellers said. And so I think to allow Reno County to hire the best possible people to do the best job they can under the supervising vision that we have, that I am in favor of the 100% compression. Get us back. After all, it was 2013, I think, when the first study was done. It didn't take effect into 2018. 16.
I believe it was 2016. I think it was adopted in 15, went into effect in 16.
Roughly 5.5, 6 years ago. So I think maybe it's time that we got with the real world. And unfortunately, with the situation we're in right now with all the people needing employees, that we have to be there.
I agree. I support the move. I appreciate Randy showing us how we can do this without increasing taxes. We're certainly blessed to be in the situation that we're in, where we have excess revenue or unexpected revenue to support this. I said last time, and I think it's a fair point that, in any, you can call this a business or this is just, a government operation or whatever it is. I think anytime you take a big, chunk of revenue like this, and allocate it, typically you would want staff to, over time, help you figure out how to recover it. And so I don't think, over the long term, we're going to be able to sustain this without some forward-looking, creative efforts and efficiency and limiting expense or, limiting scope creep on staffing. I think all of those things need to be considered. And I mean, this is frankly the easiest option. Like, Randy, you made this super easy for us. It could have been a lot harder, where we would have to look at cutting staff or cutting services. And sometimes that might be a good thing for a government entity to have pressures like that, to look at ways to reduce costs. And so I'm happy, and I think it's very important that we support and pay all of our employees what they deserve and what the market expects. And so I think those are great things we've done today. I think we've lost some incentive to be cost conscious too, because you found a way to do this. And so I would hope, and I think maybe that's where we're going to head this afternoon in our meeting, is priorities on how to maintain our budgets and reduce costs when necessary, and help us continue to reduce the mill levy. So thank you, Randy, for figuring this out and creating a solution that doesn't require us to increase taxes. And I'm looking forward to this afternoon, where we can set a plan forward to where this doesn't happen again. Like, we don't want to put ourselves in this position again, and where in 4 to 5 years we support this on our own. So thank you.
Well, I don't know that I have anything different to say than the other two commissioners. I too believe that we should do the whole 100% that's being requested, and not to repeat what the other two commissioners have said, but I think that wages are part of a reason why a person works for a certain firm. And I applaud the fact that we're including trying to acquire people and allow part of their past performance to be included into the pay scale. I think that's an important issue. I know Randy is working with the directors on better management style, better initiatives, and better company or county philosophy of good jobs and quality jobs. And I think that work will probably be equal to what we're doing today with pay, because people want to work where they feel that they are appreciated, where they're doing quality work. And I think our efforts in the future there are just as important as what we're doing with a pay scale. And so, Randy, I applaud what you've done to date, and I think it's even more important today to do more of what you're doing there with the directors, to show people that they're appreciated, try to train them well, and so forth. This, what we're doing today will not solve all of our recruiting problems, but with the directors doing their part of this will certainly help alleviate it.
Very well said.
So, do you have a motion, Mr. Chairman, or?
You would make one,
Well,
or someone?
I'll let Commissioner Friesen do that.
I make a motion to approve the county administrator's recommendation for 100%. Would you help me with this?
Yeah, I would recommend right here, the recommendation of staff to adopt the new pay scales, address compression at 100%, and approve the grow/build buy-up philosophy for hiring ranges. Go into effect with the second pay period of February.
I'd make the motion as recommended by the county administrator.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the motion as repeated by the county administrator. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Friesen,
Yes.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes.
Mr. Hurst.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was just going back to the main screen, so.
I do want to add one thing before we get into any executive sessions. And to inform the public who might be watching this, as well as others who might be interested, is that we will pause the video and audio during the executive sessions. And we'll come back live after the executive sessions. And should there be any actions taken by the commission, and also for the reorganization of the commission, that will come back live after the executive session. So, and we have scheduled about an hour and 15, but we don't know whether that will take that long or not. Okay? Just wanted to
Chairman,
make
I
that
have one question for Don, since he's still here. Don, on Bueller Haven Road, the Arkansas River, what are they doing down there?
The channel had moved clear to the south side and was eroding the south side of the bank, and they've moved that channel back to the center, and now they've completed that. So now the river's running down through the middle of more towards the middle of the bridge instead of the outside edge.
Whose job was that?
Counties.
You did that, okay. It looked, I didn't know you could move a river like that, but it's pretty impressive.
Well, the river will move itself.
And did you have any luck with KDOT on the detours?
On the detour, I contacted them that very same day, and on the 82nd going north, there was a couple signs missing, and they're seeing about repairing that. On 56, I went ahead and installed signs. So now if you come from Bueller, if you stay on 56, you'll never get onto a dirt road. So that's those signs are up.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Randy, you're done. You have
We're
more?
done with the,
Pardon?
we're done with that. I'm ready for my report when you're ready.
Commissioner Friesen?
Sorry, I've interrupted the flow. Is it?
Yeah, it's Randy's turn.
I just thought I wanted to catch Don before he left, but thank you.
Included in your packet, like other meetings, are the monthly department reports. I wanted to see if anyone had any questions on anything in these monthly reports on this group. If not, I'm going to mention one that will be in the next meeting, but just wanted to bring it to your attention that maintenance had mentioned that on the courthouse renovation, that, we're the schedule, he has reached out to Pishney, and we're trying to get them on the schedule for a commission meeting for them to come here in front of the commission to explain the schedule, explain some of the timeline and what's going on and why it's taking longer than expected. And we're looking at possibly doing that on January 25th. So I just want to kind of give you a heads up. It's in his monthly report for the next monthly report, but you'll see it the same day that we'll have them here. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And Then also in the packet is a financial report. As you can see, we're in good condition with most funds. This is as of December 31st, but this is not year end because we have month 13. We still have encumbrances, other expenses, that bills that will be paid out of the 2021 budget. So these are not audited numbers. This is just that point in time. As you can see, the general fund, the revenues, we actually brought in 18 million. Most of this 9 million is cash carryover, so that wasn't expected. So we're really in line with what we expected to bring. We probably actually brought in more than we expected on revenues, separate from the cash carryover. That's part of that. Not sure if you had any questions. There wasn't really any specific department to highlight or fund. The overall general fund, again, going back to the previous part of the discussion, our beginning fund balance at the beginning of the year is 14.9 million. Right now it's 17.9 million. Again, that won't be the final number, but we are better off than we began the year. So, and that's out of expenses of about 16.5 million so far. And that doesn't include transfers. So we also have year-end fund transfers that will increase to that expense and take away from that cash balance. And Department of Aging is in good shape. Began the year 763, currently 917. Health Department also has increased. I think most of these noxious weeds is the only one that's gone down. Special bridge is going up. So any questions on the finances? Those were my items.
Okay. County Commission reports. Daniel?
Just a couple items. I wanted to just thank again Public Works for making those detours for the new highway work around Nickerson. Wanted to mention that Kansas Farm Bureau has a campaign school for potential officials that want to run for elected office. They have 20 slots available. The local KFB district administrator asked that I let the public know that is a 2-day event and talks about nuts and bolts of campaigning, nonpartisan guidance, and other how to execute a winning campaign. So
When is that, Daniel?
it is February 9th and 10th in Manhattan. $300, $250 for KFB members.
Sure.
Anybody that wants more information, Matt McCabe, the area district administrator, has information, or they can email me and I'll send them a link. I wanted to just reiterate how, I think all of us here appreciate county staff, and it's one of the more challenging things that I've found as a commissioner. I often compare what it's like in private business to what it's like in public office, and in a private business, you don't have management discussions in a public setting where everybody gets to hear all of the minutia and the back and forth, and I think it's easy for it to be interpreted negatively as you go through the process of talking about pros and cons, and I appreciate county staff's patience as we worked through the pay scale process, and I know at some points it may have looked like one or more of us were by just our conversation about pros and cons, maybe unsupportive of what the county staff does, and that's never been the case for me, and I don't think it was for any of you. So I appreciate staff's patience and the public's patience. It's just sometimes these processes take time, and they're not always as eloquent as one would want. So thank you for the patience on that, and I'm grateful that we have an opportunity to at least get staff back up to market rates, and certainly am open to looking at what we need to do to stay competitive in the future. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sellers?
I think I only have one item. Last, believe Thursday morning, I attended the annual meeting of the Reno County Soil Conservation District out at Dillon Nature Center. I think I've attended 3 of them now, and I'm always pleased to see how much knowledge those folks have and how much help they can give individual farmers or ranchers if they just ask. I believe we fund them to the tune of $47,000 or something a year. It does seem like K-State ought to fund the whole thing, but I'm proud that we help that group because they're doing a lot of good work in Reno County. And Commissioner Hurst, I know you attended prior meetings there. Whether rangeland fire, and I think we're going to hear some more here in the near future on some fire issues and so forth. I'm looking forward to hearing those. Soil conservation work, Cheney watershed work, what they're learning with, help me Ron, the crops. Cover crops. I think agriculture is just an amazing thing, and we're right in the middle of it here in Reno County. And I just appreciate what the Soil Conservation District in Reno County does for the help of farmers and ranchers. That's all I have.
All right. Yes, I was out of town and unfortunately had to miss that. There's a couple items here that we've got in our board mail that I think is worth looking at to attend if you can, just to let the legislatures know that Reno County is here. And that's January 26th. It's Local Government Day, and that's 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., which I've attended it before, and I think if you have the opportunity to attend, that's a good one to attend. And also, and make arrangements ahead of time to see your legislators. That morning is a good time to schedule that. And also the County Day at the Capitol is almost a new event, isn't it, Randy?
I believe the way they're doing it, it is new. It's a new approach, new day.
Because there's going to be booths and so forth out in the main area of the Capitol that day to inform and meet with legislatures also that day. So those are 2 events that I feel we should be looking at to let Reno County know and let the legislatures of our district as well as some others who we are. And I just want to thank the fellow commissioners for putting up with me because I've done so much studying on this wind CWAX regulations that you get centered in the way of trying to find out what's best for a company that might want to come in, as well as the citizens. And so from that standpoint, that's my basis of doing and saying what I did, because my quite extensive study with regard to that and trying to sort out what's good and what's not and what can be happening. So that's all the comments I have, blessed with staff and employees here. And so at this time, we will pause during these executive sessions with video and audio and come back at a later time so that they are informed of any decisions or actions taken by this commission after the executive session is completed. So I would take a motion for a 15-minute executive session for non-elected personnel with potential action to take place following the executive session. And I would ask that Randy attend also. Randy, is there anyone else that...
I think on the first one, have Joe O'Sullivan also with us.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. More discussion? All right. Roll call.
Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes. Are we having a break? We'll take a, let's just say a 5-minute break.
Quarter till 10:40.
You guys are back on?
Yeah.
Okay.
We back in session.
Oh, we ready? Okay, call the meeting back to order. And,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for the, after conferral of county council or county administrator's performance, I'd recommend a increase in base pay to $154,500 annual, plus deferred compensation.
I'll second that.
that would also include reimbursement for normal expenses that we normally have had, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Take a roll call, please.
Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes. Okay, and now the next item for consideration is a contract for the county councilor, replacing our longtime county councilor, Joe O'Sullivan, who's retiring.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve and sign the contract that's been presented to us today for the independent contractor agreement for county councilor, which is an agreement between the Board of Reno County Commissioners of Reno County and Patrick G. Hoffman, attorney at law.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the independent contractor agreement for county councilor as stated in the motion by Commissioner Sellers. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes. I believe that concludes the bit. Randy, is there anything else with regard to?
You do the reorganization of the Board of County Commissioners now, and then we can move into the other meeting.
I just thought I'd let him sweat a little bit. I would take a motion for chairmanship of the Reno County Commission for 2022.
Chairman, I would move that we elect Commissioner Daniel Friesen as chair for the 2022 year.
I will second that motion. I guess officially, any other nominations? So, none other? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Friesen?
Abstain?
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Vice Chair. Do you have a Vice Chair?
Vice Chair.
Now we'll take nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd nominate Commissioner Sellers for vice chair.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, the information that the county councilor gave us on this issue is that we don't necessarily have to have a vice chairman, that if the chairman is absent, the remaining commissioners decide who will preside at that meeting. Is that correct information that was given to us?
I'm not sure on that. I have to.
Okay, well, let's have a vote then.
Roll call.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Abstain.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes. And that concludes the business. And we will end the video and audio. And as soon as we eat lunch, or as we're eating lunch, we will start the work session on planning.
Thank you.